ライオンです。
To inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America. Hello and welcome to First Post America. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And this Monday is certainly off to a raucous start with developing stories from Chicago to Gaza. But before we break all of that down, here's a look at the latest headlines. Norway closes its office catering to Palestinians in the West Bank over the weekend after Israel revokes accreditation of Norwegian diplomats. Oslo calls Israel's actions both extreme and unreasonable. Ships from China and the Philippines collide while patrolling in the South China Sea. Beijing and Manila blame each other for the confrontation near the Spratly Islands. South Korea and the United States begin their annual military drills in the Korean Peninsula. Over 19,000 South Korean troops join the 11-day live firing exercise along with their American counterparts. Sudan reports 22 deaths amid a cholera epidemic in the war-torn country. Sudanese officials also worry about the spread of mpox from the neighboring Central African Republic. And the United Kingdom and Peru signed a deal worth $630 million for hospital infrastructure in the South American nation. Lima says at least 2 high-tech hospitals will be built that will benefit more than 5 million Peruvians. We begin in the United States. The Democratic National Convention begins today in Chicago and will run through Thursday. The convention comes just 4 weeks after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race for the White House and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the nominee for the Democratic Party's presidential ticket. Thousands of energized Democrats are already in the Windy City as Kamala Harris prepares to accept the Democratic presidential nomination. President Biden will in fact deliver the keynote address tonight, making the symbolic handoff to his 2020 running mate. Now, according to the convention organizers, each day will have night-by-night themes, with Monday night's theme being for the people, a phrase that has become very popular at Harris's rallies. President Biden will also be joined by his wife and First Lady Jill Biden, along with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz arrived in Chicago earlier today, fresh off a bus tour in Battleground, Pennsylvania. The massive convention is estimated to have more than 50,000 people attending in person. Meanwhile, thousands protested on the streets of Chicago, urging Democratic leaders to take more tangible actions for stopping the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza.
I think that the Democrats should have to earn our votes. I think that we shouldn't just give them away automatically because they're not Trump. I think their policies are really similar. I'm here hoping that they'll sign an arms embargo to Israel.
Now, before arriving in Chicago, Kamala Harris called for a ceasefire deal along with the release of American and Israeli hostages that are still being held by Hamas.
I will not speak for him, but I will tell you that these conversations are ongoing and we are not giving up. And we are going to continue to work very hard on this. We got to get a ceasefire. and we got to get those hostages out.
Now, shifting focus to domestic policies, hundreds of demonstrators called on the Democrats to do more for reproductive rights after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022.
We're here marching to tell the Democrats that we need more on abortion rights and abortion access. So we've heard a lot from Kamala Harris and the Democrats about restoring Roe, and that does not go far enough. That's not good enough. So many people did not have access to abortion under Roe. So we're here to say that we want to move beyond that framework.
Thousands of young and first-time voters arrived in Chicago's United Center to attend the Democratic convention and show their support for Kamala Harris.
I'm really excited to vote this year specifically for Kamala Harris because I know that's kind of what she's fighting for.
I love her. I am so glad to see a presidential nominee who is youthful and joyful, and I think that reflects right back onto the Democrats, and I am so excited to be able to vote for her. My first time voting in a presidential election, and I could not be happier.
Yeah, I think Kamala Harris is great. I think she brings a lot of energy to women, but just in general to the voting population and outside of it even.
Now, as Democrats begin their 4-day extravaganza in Chicago, rivals Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance have lined up a full week of events across battleground states. Taking their cue from the DNC, the Trump-Vance campaign has also added themes to each day of campaigning this week, with Monday being about the economy. The Republicans will be in Pennsylvania today, where both men have stumbled and immersed themselves in controversies in recent days. Only 78 days, however, remain until voters head to the polls, and new polling data out just yesterday shows Harris still holds leads, both nationally and in key battleground states. Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance are hoping to blunt the Harris-Walz momentum in what is expected to be a week of star power from the Windy City. From the glitz and glam of the DNC to ongoing tensions in the Middle East, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel, where he met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and several senior Israeli officials. Now, this is Secretary Blinken's 9th visit to the region since the war between Israel and Hamas broke out in October of last year. The visit comes right after the ceasefire talks hosted by Qatar ended without a deal. Hamas, which boycotted the talks, accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of not agreeing to the original deal that was proposed by President Joe Biden back in May. Hamas said Netanyahu is now the sole obstruction in reaching a truce. The Palestinian group also stated that they would only accept the deal and release the hostages if Israel pulls all of its troops out of Gaza. Now, in response, Prime Minister Netanyahu argued that Israel would only recall his troops once all the hostages have in fact been released. Secretary Blinken will now head to Egypt, where another round of talks are scheduled with the United States and Qatar acting as mediators. America's top diplomat says he's certain that the Cairo talks are the best and probably the last opportunity for achieving peace in the region.
This is a decisive moment, probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home, to get a ceasefire, and to put everyone on a better path to enduring peace and security. I'm here as part of an intensive diplomatic effort on President Biden's instructions to try to get this agreement to the line and ultimately over the line.
Now, despite the ongoing negotiations, fighting in the region does continue. In the south, Israel conducted airstrikes in the Gaza Strip, killing at least 21 people. Meanwhile, Lebanon-based Hezbollah fired at least 50 rockets into northern Israel, which was followed by cross-border gunfire at Israeli civilians. In retaliation, Israeli fighter jets carried out an airstrike in Lebanon, killing at least 10 people, including members of Hezbollah. All attention is now on the talks in Cairo as the United States and Qatar and Egypt work overtime to bring Israel and Hamas to the negotiating table and bring an end to the brutal 10-month-long war. In Europe, Ukrainian troops continue to push deeper into Russia's Kursk region. And for the first time since the invasion began back in February of 2022, Kyiv has turned the tables on Moscow by capturing Russian land. Using its infantry, artillery, tanks, and air support, Ukraine has now established a buffer zone and the Russian territory after making rapid gains on the ground. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his troops will continue to strengthen their position in Kursk and press on with the offensive.
Today, General Syrskyi also reported on the continuation of our advance in the Kursk region. The operation is proceeding exactly as we planned. The bravery of Ukrainians is achieving great things. We are now strengthening our positions. The bridgehead of our presence is becoming stronger.
Now, over the weekend, Ukrainian forces used U.S.-made precision-guided munitions to destroy two strategic bridges at the same river in Kursk that were being used by Russia for logistical and supply operations. The first bridge was destroyed in a town called Glushkovo, and the second Russian bridge was taken out in a town called Zvano. Now, it's unclear whether the recently acquired F-16 jets carried out the offensive. However, footage released by the Ukrainian Air Force shows how both the bridges were targeted using precision-guided bombs and missiles. Meanwhile, thousands of Russians have been evacuated from Kursk and are being relocated across different regions of the country. Now, to amplify the pressure on Moscow, Kyiv has launched a series of combat drills in and around the occupied region of Kursk.
The armed forces of Ukraine demonstrate right now how warfare will look like in the future. We are writing history at this very moment. We're showing the whole world how to fight a war in the 21st century.
Now, in what appears to be frustration, Russia has carried out a wave of aerial attacks on Ukrainian territories targeting civilian infrastructure like malls and residential buildings. In fact, late on Saturday, Russian forces also launched a drone strike that nearly hit the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, drawing strong criticism from the United Nations. Ukrainian troops have delivered a complete shock to Vladimir Putin as Russia struggles to regain the lost territories. In fact, the Ukrainian incursion marks the first time that foreign troops have occupied Russian land since World War II. And now in China, a shocking scandal involving the illegal trade of human corpses has been uncovered. Instead of being cremated, over 4,000 bodies were secretly sold to two major biomaterial companies which are tied to the state. The corpses were then dissected and turned into bone grafting materials, generating millions of dollars in revenue over a span of 8 years. The scheme involving funeral homes, doctors, and a state-owned enterprise has exposed a dark side of China's medical industry. Here's our report with more.
In northern China, prosecutors have uncovered a disturbing decade-long scheme involving the illegal sale of corpses meant for cremation. This scheme, spanning at least 7 provinces, has implicated dozens of suspects, including funeral home managers, doctors, and company shareholders. At the center of this shocking case are two companies, Shanxi Osteorad Biomaterial and Sichuan Hengpu Technology. From 2015 to 2023, these companies illegally obtained more than 4,000 corpses, generating nearly $53 million in revenue. The cadavers were collected from funeral homes across various localities and were then dissected, stored, and eventually processed into biomaterial devices used in bone grafting procedures. The scheme was not limited to just the companies. Funeral homes in the southwestern provinces of Yunnan, Guizhou, and Sichuan, as well as in the Chongqing municipality, played a crucial role. These funeral homes charged families for cremation services, but instead sold the corpses to hospitals for dissection and storage. In some cases, unclaimed bodies were chosen for the illegal trade. A staff member at the anatomy department of Guilin Medical University purchased at least 450 corpses from 3 of these funeral homes, paying around $125 per body. The bodies were then sold to Shanxi Osteorad for up to $1,400 each. In another instance, a transplant surgeon at the affiliated hospital of Qingdao University processed and sold at least 10 bodies to the company, earning between $1,400 and $3,000 per corpse. Shanxi Osteorad staff not only mishandled the cadavers but also fabricated the necessary documentation to cover their tracks. This allowed them to bypass strict regulatory oversight that typically governs the use of cadaveric tissue for medical purposes. The scandal came to light in September 2023 when China's National Audit Office began investigating the irregular earnings of the Guilin Teaching Hospital's faculty member. This probe led to the discovery of the broader scheme, prompting authorities to seize over 34,000 biomaterial products, at least 18 tons of semi-finished goods, nearly 16 properties, and at least 29 vehicles linked to the illegal trade. As of last week, Chinese prosecutors confirmed that all 75 suspects involved in the scheme have admitted to their roles, and a lawyer who blew the whistle on a nationwide trade in stolen and dismembered corpses has been removed from his position as director of a Beijing law firm. The exposure of this decade-long scheme highlights a troubling aspect of China's medical industry. While the use of cadaveric tissue in medical procedures is common, it's typically governed by strict ethical guidelines and donor consent. The illegal trade of bodies in this case not only violated these principles but also exploited grieving families and unclaimed deceased individuals.
And finally, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan is making headlines once again. The incarcerated leader has made an unexpected bid to become the next chancellor of Britain's iconic Oxford University. Despite being behind bars, Imran Khan is now seeking public support as he hopes to steer one of the world's most respected academic institutions. Our final report takes you inside this bizarre move.
Dreams come in all shapes and sizes. From the grand ambitions of becoming a tech billionaire like Elon Musk, to the audacious goal of running the world's most powerful nation in presidential style. The world's greats always encourage us to dream big. And why not? But let's talk about one of the more unconventional dreams making waves lately. The aspiration to become the Chancellor of Oxford University. A seat so prestigious that just uttering the title makes a person feel a little more scholarly. Now, chasing the Chancellorship of Oxford might seem like a pipe dream for most of us. But if you've got the credentials, who's to say it's out of reach? However, what if you are currently behind bars? Yep, you heard that right. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan, currently residing in less than luxurious accommodations, which is a jail cell, has set his sights on Oxford's coveted leadership role. It seems Khan's time in jail has given him ample opportunity to reflect on life's possibilities, a third career perhaps. After being a celebrated cricketer who won Pakistan the 1992 World Cup to the country's Prime Minister in 2018, the 71-year-old now wants to switch professions again. One of Khan's advisors, Zulfi Bukhari, recently tweeted that the former Prime Minister has submitted an application for the Oxford University Chancellorship election in October 2024. And as if that's not enough to raise eyebrows, he's also apparently seeking public support for what is sure to be a historic campaign. Because nothing says a vote for me like a man currently detained on a slew of charges. Khan, who served as Pakistan's Prime Minister from 2018 to 2022, was ousted via an army-backed no-confidence vote and has been in jail for the past year. During his tenure, Pakistan experienced skyrocketing inflation and security crises with its neighbors. And now, the same man who steered Pakistan in that rather interesting direction wants to lead one of the most prestigious universities in the world. But can one even run for Oxford office while in jail? Apparently, the British University has updated its election rules, allowing nominations and voting to be done online. And this conveniently sidesteps the need for Khan to make a dramatic escape for voting day. Some might call this luck, others might call it irony working overtime. To meet the qualifications, Khan does have the relevant experience. He was the Chancellor of the University of Bradford for 8 years, and back in the 1970s he studied politics, philosophy and economics at Oxford's Keble College, alongside playing for the university's Blues cricket team as well. The nomination period is over, The final list of candidates will be announced in early October. Voting will start online from October 28, with only Oxford graduates and members of the university's congregation eligible to vote. Should Khan emerge victorious? A scenario that, let's be honest, reads more like a plot twist from a political thriller. He would chair the committee responsible for appointing the Vice-Chancellor and be involved in fundraising, advocacy and overseeing university operations.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham.